The vision for me is that every dog has a halo collar, and not really because it's my business, but because I know how tragic and unfortunate the current situation is.
Welcome to another episode of Forging the Future, and I'm here today speaking with Ken Ehrman, who's an entrepreneur and innovator, and currently the founder and managing partner at Halo Collar. Thanks for being on the show, Ken.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's great to be here.
So I heard a little bit about your founder's journey. Of course, we've known each other for several years now, but tell me a little bit about your early career. How did you get started in software engineering and machine learning?
Definitely. What's amazing is I was an engineer. I went to Stanford, and I had high hopes of being one of the typical entrepreneurs who starts the company to change the world.
Really?
So that was my plan.
Okay.
And my first job out of college was at a Silicon Valley startup called Echelon, founded by one of the founders of Apple, Mike Markkula, and they wanted to be the smart chip inside everything but computers. They're like, Intel could have the computers. We want everything else.
And
air
this is
conditioning.
80s or 90s, or where are we at?
Late 80s.
Late 80s, okay.
Before the internet. So
Okay.
before many things. And by the way, it turns out that was a mistake. Well, maybe it's not necessarily a mistake based on what's going on now, but most of the entrepreneurs leaving Stanford at that time went into the internet, which had a lot more immediate success.
The information superhighway.
Correct. Exactly.
They used to call it.
In fact, one of the people I know was starting PayPal. And I was like, that's a crazy idea. Who would ever use their phone to transfer money? So, it was really what I was focused on was taking this smart chip and building it into a solution to track and monitor high value assets. So that was what I started with. So take that chip, attach it to a forklift, attach it to a rental car, attach it to a tractor trailer so that you can monitor the assets, make sure they're used safely and efficiently.
And at that time, you weren't a founder, right? You were being pulled in as a
Right, I was an employee at Echelon. But when approached to start my own company, which turned out to be ID Systems, I was like, that's a great idea. Let's take that chip and use it for something. So, Echelon had this great chip, but they were trying to get companies to build it into their products. And it was kind of hard to do. But the chip was great. So I was like, I'll take it and build some products that are better than anything else out there and leverage the technology to have a successful company.
We talk about that a lot on this show. What I call taking the red pill, right? You're an employee at a company and get a steady paycheck. What was it like, or what was the impetus for you to actually make that first step?
It's funny you asked that because
Free fall.
I said no multiple times. So I had a friend who was about my age now, in his early 50s. I was, 23. And he was a executive in a lithium battery company. And he said, people are coming to me saying RFID tags are going to be everywhere. And we're going to need millions of lithium batteries. Let's start a company using the Echelon chip in RFID tags. It'll be great. And I said, no way. I love this company. This is the hottest company in Silicon Valley. I would never leave. They're giving me stock options. No way. But then 6 months later, he called me again. He's like, Ken, they're still telling me about all these batteries. You got to do it. Let's do it. I still said no. So finally, a year later, it was a year after he first reached out to me, I said, you know what? He's right. Let's take this chip and build it into an RFID tag.
So when you founded it, it was you, this guy that was trying to convince you to start the company, and there was a couple other people, right?
Yes. So this gentleman was the CEO of a company called Ultralife, and then it was his business partner that had worked very closely together. And then I picked the smartest engineer I knew from Stanford at the time, that I was friends with. So there was the four of us who got going.
And you split it up 25, 25, 25, 25?
Yes.
You did? Okay.
Each of us owned a quarter of the company, but because we were young, they put up more of the money. But it is important to say they made us all put up money. So it was very important not only that we had upside, but that we had downside, so that we felt like we were truly invested.
How much money
in the
back
company.
then? You were 23 years old, 24 years old. How much did they make you put up?
$25,000 each.
That's a lot, actually.
It was all my bar mitzvah money.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. But I was, pretty convinced it was going to work. Obviously, when you start, we took some limited salaries. But the biggest piece of advice that they gave us was, don't try to raise more money. Instead, try to find ways to bring money into the company without selling equity. And so their specific suggestion was to go to the government, try to find R&D opportunities where the government was trying to solve some problem and your technology would help, and they would potentially fund your R&D to the tune of potentially millions of dollars so that they can get what they want. And of course, we ended up getting what we wanted.
And so you did that. You successfully got millions.
Millions. We found someone at the Postal Service who wanted to use a smart RFID tag to track letters, and they weren't doing it. So they wanted to know, where were the delays? As you know, the mail is not the most efficient system out there. And so they wanted to be able to take test letters, drop them in the mail, and see their entire route, how long they stayed at each place, so they could identify the bottlenecks and the processes where they needed to improve in order to meet their service commitments.
I think this is actually something that's not tapped all that well by founders. And I took a government seminar class about how to work with the government, and they said actually the key differentiator there for people that succeed in getting contracts from the government is just like most things, is the commitment to actually get through the paperwork and the effort, or however many months it takes. And then you can get these contracts that actually align well with what your business model already is. I know this was a while ago, so things may have changed, but did you have to hire someone that had experience finding government contracts, or did you just, and back then there's no internet, so it's not like you just go to Google or Reddit or something like, how do I get an eGov contract or something like that? But how did you manage to find the guy that wants to buy more from you than you wanted to sell to them?
That's a great question. So back then there was called the Commerce Business Daily. So there was a section for R&D. So there was anything the government buys, I don't know if anyone knows this, above a certain minimum amount, like $25,000, they have to publish and to the public so that anyone could bid on it. That's their method of keeping things fair and a level playing field. So even though it was sole source, it still has to be published. So what we would do is every day review the Commerce Business Daily. Actually, now it's called Fed Biz Ops.
All right.
So if you go into Fed Biz Ops, go to the R&D area, you'll usually find people who are trying to develop some technology solution to a real problem. Find out the point of contact. Usually they're just going to give you the contracting officer. The contracting officer is very valuable, but you want to find the technical officer, the person, the business side, who's looking to solve the problem. They're going to tell you that's not the process, but you got to go meet with them. You have to. And you have to share your vision, and it's the people, not the government, who really make the decision. So get onto Fed Biz Ops. Look at opportunities that are applicable to your business. If that doesn't exist, and I don't know how long you want to sit there waiting. I mean, it took us 6 months to find this postal thing.
And they don't retain IP. They're not asking for equity.
No.
Sometimes it's just NRE that they don't end up actually buying the product eventually anyway, but you can get your product developed and then sell it to someone commercial. Right?
Correct.
Yeah, and we're still at your first company,
Yes,
ID
that's
Systems,
true.
which you eventually then took public. How much was the raise from the IPO?
We sold 2 million shares at $7 a share, so we raised $14 million in 1999, which was really all we needed to take ID Systems to the next level.
Nice. Well, let's skip ahead. At some point, you took the red pill again.
Yes.
All right. Tell me a little bit about how that came about.
So it was tough because ID Systems had grown to a multinational company with offices around the country. We were had relationships with most of the Fortune 100. We were rolling out our technology on their forklifts, trailers, and rental cars. But then my niece's dog got out of their invisible fence and was run over by a car and killed. And it was a real tragedy. And, we were all just as devastated as could be for Ruby and for the family. They had just rescued Ruby a year earlier. Everyone loved her.
And then she had an invisible fence.
Yeah, right? She had the invisible fence, and her dog got out. It's just a wire. So it's just, even a real fence, dogs can get out. People leave the gates open. They dig underneath. There's what I was astonished to learn after this tragedy was that 10 million pets are lost every year. And 1 million dogs are hit by a car.
That is crazy.
With all the technology we have, think about it, Fitbit, cell phones, Apple Watch, you name it. And still, dogs just don't understand that cars are dangerous. And if they run after a deer and end up somewhere they don't recognize, they can get lost. I mean, it's reality. They are getting lost. And I was like, this is a real problem, and a problem that I believed I had the experience and the know-how to solve, because this is exactly what I was doing for forklifts, rental cars, and trailers, but there's no higher value asset than someone's dog.
Exactly. And so you went about creating this amazing technology in a collar.
Yes, this is the Halo. It's flexible and it fits on any dog. And basically, you don't need a wire anymore. You just draw it on your phone. When your dog goes near the fence, it beeps and uses static the exact same way the other technology did. Your dog won't know the difference between a GPS line and a wire. But now they can't get out. So it's safer because you can't get out of GPS. It's not a wire you can cross. But in addition, it's portable and it sets up instantly. So since we launched Halo, my dog Reese's, who's 11, who, by the way, learned the invisible fence when she was 6 months old, she remembered beep means fence from, early on. But that meant, and it's really been life-changing for her, now we could take her anywhere. So we used to go away for a week to someone's house. We would board her. Now we take her with us. We just draw the fence around the new house, and now we can let her out. So I knew with accurate GPS, we could replace this antiquated technology and disrupt the market, which was interesting and important for any entrepreneurs, because there's one thing to create a market, and that's what I was trying to do at my former company, which is try to convince people to put $2,000 devices on their forklift or $400 devices into their rental car. In this case, people were buying 1 million invisible fences a year.
For like $2,000 or $3,000 a pop.
Yes, $2,000 to $3,000, which, by the way, seems like a bargain compared to a real fence. I was astonished to learn a real fence. Like, I had a 1/2 acre property. Just to do the backyard was $20,000, and the fence wasn't even pretty. So I was like, this is ridiculous. That's why I went with the $2,000 to $3,000 invisible fence in the first place. So it wasn't.
Which gives you that ROI, right? So because you sell a $1,000 dog collar with a monthly subscription, right? Which on the surface of it sounds crazy, right? Like, who's going to pay $1,000 for a dog collar and pay a monthly subscription? But it's still much better than the product that's out there.
Compared to the alternative, it's much more economical and much better. So, now your dog can't get out. Or, for example, January to April, it's coming up. You can't, if you're in a frozen area or there's snow on the ground, you can't install a fence. You can't install even the invisible fence because you can't dig. So you got to wait till the ground thaws. So the competition, the invisible fence or even real fences, they're on standstill from January to April.
Right.
So we basically have the world to ourselves during that time frame. Plus, with a lot of millennials these days, they're on the move. So if you rent, you're not going to install an invisible fence. If you have an RV, when you get to your wonderful destination, you're not going to install an invisible fence. but you want to let your dog out. I mean, everyone wants to let their dog
You can
out.
take your dog with you, whether it's to the beach, to your mother-in-law's, make sure they don't dig up her daisies, whatever. Right?
Exactly. Well, that's a perfect example. My father-in-law, that's an exact example, by the way. He loved.
It's almost like I might have heard that story
Maybe
before.
you did. But he had a pool, and we used to bring my dog to the pool, and she loved it. But then he's like, she can't come anymore because he put all these beautiful flowers around the pool, and he's like, I don't want her ruining the flowers. So in addition to the fence, we also had developed what's called the beacon. And basically, this is a little Bluetooth emitting device that you set the range. We put it into the flower bed, and when the collar gets near the beacon, it beeps the same way as if you were going near the edge of the fence. So not only can you do the beacon to keep your dog out of the flower bed, but you can keep them off the new couch. You can keep them off your beautiful rug. You can. Some people use it if they have two dogs. One dog will eat the other dog's food. This is so hard to control. So you turn beacons on. You put one by the bowl. Only one, one dog can eat the food.
So you've got this amazing technology, GPS, Wi-Fi, shock if they want to use it, audio.
Static. We call it static.
Statics. You've got the ability to whistle basically your dog back. You've got a fantastic ROI compared to the competition, but you still felt like there was a need. You needed something more in order to sell your product and build your business. So tell me a little bit about your other founder that you actually went out and got.
By the way, that's critical. You could have the greatest concept of a product and an idea, but I knew early on that we needed an expert in dogs. So if you're in the IoT business or the asset tracking business, you could be great with regards to developing the infrastructure and getting the data back to IoT Hub and making sure it's secure and timely and accurate and all that stuff. But whatever asset you're tracking or monitoring, you need to really understand. So you have to be an expert in the asset that you're tracking and monitoring. So I knew there was no other expert in dogs other than Cesar Millan. So this is him.
The dog whisperer.
The dog whisperer is right on the box. So I was committed to getting him early on in the process. So when we developed it, it was something that it would work for dogs, that dogs would respond to it. But it also was the right product for the dog owner. So it started from day one. He was like, this is what we needed to do. And then, we said to him, is there a way you can devise a solution where you don't have to shock the dog? Where you could use other methods to get their attention. And of course, Cesar was like, absolutely. Now, he did say that when a dog is distracted, you're still going to need static electricity. You're going to, because I think he said something like 40% of dogs are not going to respond if you don't have it, which is a big number.
Depending on the breed, I guess.
No, it's not the breed.
Really?
It's interesting. It's not the breed. It's the energy.
All right.
So if they're high energy, they're not going to respond. If they're,
to audio only or something, right?
Yes, to audio, even vibration. So it's a function of the dog's energy level. So what we've seen now, though, is with Cesar's method, is it now works on 99.9% of dogs. So we have very few, if any, customers returning it, saying dogs don't listen.
So on top of giving him as the expert in dogs, he actually brought his training as well to the collar, right?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, the way he likes to describe it is people speak phone. So, they're on their app. There's when you're on your app, you can not only draw fences and set up the beacons, but you can manually send a message to your dog. It's one of my favorite features I use all the time, which is a whistle. So you hit the whistle button, and my dog comes running back to me like Lassie. I mean, it's unbelievable. And by the way, when I called her name, and she's 11, she never came. Maybe she came 20% of the time. But she did. And then, of course, I was like, Cesar, I don't understand this. Why isn't she listening to me? I say, Reese's, come. She doesn't come. And he said, listen, that's because when you say Reese's, there's no automatic association with that name because you use it for so many different reasons. It's like the same way when your dog hears a doorbell, they bark instantly. Dogs learn through associative memory. So beep means fence. Doorbell means someone's at the door. It has to have an instant and consistent association. So using their name, they don't understand that what you're trying to say. They're like, what do you mean? You said Reese's. What does that mean? So the whistle, now it's like instinctual. When she hears that whistle, she like her head move, like it's instant. She knows whistle means come back. And it wasn't even that hard to teach her. She's 11 because you hit the whistle button, you give her a treat. You hit the whistle button, you give her a treat. You do that 5 times, she learns whistle means come.
How often do you have to reinforce it after the 5 times? Do you have to do it once in a while?
I do it all the time because I use it. So in other words, it's not...
I mean, give her the treat, I mean.
I do that every now and again. You don't need to. She knows it. I mean, again, it was funny. I had a big demo. This is an interesting story. So when we were raising money the last time, it was a $400 million valuation. And we had a bunch of investors who were considering a sizable check. One guy was actually potentially going to put $5 million in. But he said, I want to see a demo, but I don't want to see you demo it. I want you to bring your dog to my house. They've never been here before. Set up the fence, and I want to see it work. And if it works, you got the $5 million.
No pressure.
No pressure. So, of course, I called Reese's and said, Reese's, this is a very important demo. We got to do it. You got to listen. She didn't know what I was saying. She just looked at me like I was crazy. So, obviously. So I called Cesar, and I'm like, Cesar, I have this big demo coming up. What should I do? How do I get prepared for this thing? And he goes, look, Ken, it's instinctual by now. You don't have to do anything. All you need to do is be calm and confident, and she will listen. If you're nervous or acting like things are weird or things are out of the ordinary and she detects that, she might not listen. But as long as you're calm, confident, it's going to work. But what he did say was, you know what? Half an hour before the demo, go to a field and just practice. So I was like, that makes sense. Just get her in the right mindset. So I did it, and I got there half an hour early. Within a minute, I had tested both things. I threw a ball past the fence. She heard the beep. She stopped. I hit the whistle button. She came. And I was like, what am I going to do for the other 28 minutes? So we went to the demo, and it worked perfectly. This guy I threw the ball past the fence. She stopped. Then I couldn't believe it. In his pocket, he had a piece of steak.
Oh, no. He's trying to set you up.
Yeah. And he went to the other side of the line with the piece of steak. And Reese's wouldn't cross. He was like, I can't believe it. By the way, he wrote that check for $5 million before I even got back to my house.
What was Reese's cut of that?
I do call her the $5 million dog now, but I definitely gave her her own steak that night.
Yeah. You sold your 100,000th collar. And that's, I think, a real milestone. A lot of successes there, but I do like to show entrepreneurs and founders that it's not all one success after another. There's a lot of failures. And so is there a failure in particular that you might want to share with us today? That
we had 2 huge failures that I would say.
All right. Yeah. There's usually should be more than one, but yeah.
At least
pick your
2
favorite. Okay.
that I could think of. The first was in early 2021. We were approached by Chewy to put Halo on Chewy's website. So naturally, we were like, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. They have 30 million customers. Everyone knows Chewy. We could just sit back and count the checks. It turned out to be far from that, much worse than we could have ever imagined. And I'll tell you why, because I certainly have learned from it, and I'd love to share what we learned with others. But, we were an online retailer. We couldn't afford to have stores and malls across the country, so we're buying a direct-to-consumer product on our website. Well, Chewy's also an online retailer. So, it didn't give an advantage to our customers to maybe go into a store, feel it, touch it, and see how light it was. See how maybe you could use it on a smaller dog. So there was no real advantage to selling it also on Chewy.com to the end user.
They were purely online as well, right?
Yeah, they're
No brick and
purely
mortar.
online.
Okay.
So that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but that was just the reality. So we didn't have the opportunity to get into stores so that people could see it. So it didn't really add anything. We're still online. But then worse, they started competing with us for new customers. So the main way we were getting our customers is if someone searched the term invisible fence on Google, which you need to do because you have to find someone locally to install that collar on the fence, we would show our ad. Well, all of a sudden, Chewy was showing ads. So now we were competing for the same new customer, and now we're paying double to get the same Google ad than we were before we signed Chewy. They're competing with us. We're competing with them to try to disrupt the invisible fence purchase, and that just made our cost per acquisition go up. But then that wasn't the worst of it. They're not a tech company. So their
like
support team
throw toys and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, if someone called them and said Bluetooth's not working, their answer, and they're known for this, they're the world's best when it comes to customer service, was send it back. Not going to help you turn the Bluetooth thing on your phone.
Try pushing the button. Right?
No, they're like, send it back. So we got tons of returns because the Chewy customer service people weren't able to provide any technical customer service, which resulted in a lot of negative reviews.
So how did you get out of that?
We ended the relationship with Chewy.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was mistake
Thanks,
number one.
But no thanks. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The second mistake was when we did the raise at the $400 million level, we should have raised a lot more money. So
This is 2021.
At November of 21.
Which is the high of
it was the peak.
Of the equities and crypto and everything else.
Everything. And because, when you're trying to go after a multi-billion dollar industry like dog containment, investing $20 to $30 million in that is not a lot of money. But on the other hand, when you only raise $14 million, that money can go fast, especially given the opportunity. So you want to invest. I mean, you feel like compelled. Let's create the best website. Let's make sure the product is the best possible product. We want to maximize our opportunity.
So in hindsight, how much would you have raised at that point?
As much as we could. That's the thing. I mean, we really should have said, let's get as much as we can.
Get 50 million, whatever. Right?
Well, we got 15 million. We should have 50. Right. 50, we should have gotten 50. We should have tried. We shouldn't have stopped. The opportunity was there. The interest was there. The inclination was there. It worked perfectly. My dog passed the demo. And so that was a major mistake because now we need money again and the environment is completely different.
Yeah. And you have one other point that I want to make, especially for hardware founders.
Yes.
One of the most capital intensive parts of any hardware is actually the inventory, financing the inventory. And you've actually found a pretty creative way around that.
Yes.
May you share a little bit about how you manage that?
Yeah, that is very important because when I was going to start a company in the hardware business, now remember, my former company was in the hardware business, but we were a public company. Raising money wasn't hard. If you sold stock at $2 less than what it was on the current market, you were going to get it done because who wouldn't want to do that? So that was much easier. But when I was starting this company, the early investors were like, hardware businesses are brutal because you don't want to sell equity for inventory. And that stuck in my mind from the beginning. And so basically the way we address that is our contract manufacturer in Taiwan, two things. We basically, in the contract we have, they're responsible for all the parts, pieces, and components. They don't bill us until they ship the collar. So that was a very important way to set up the arrangement. Yeah. So, they could hold on to these parts for 6 months before they use them, but we don't have any, we ultimately have financial liability, but we're not paying. We only pay when they ship.
And they ship directly to the consumer, right?
And they ship directly to the consumer now. That's new. So FedEx has a program called International Priority Direct. And what that does is allows you to ship from Taiwan direct to a consumer at their home in 3 to 5 business days. It's unbelievable.
They go Taiwan to Alaska to anywhere in the U.S., basically.
Exactly.
That's great. I mean, I think a lot of hardware companies would wish to be in that position because it is a big challenge, not just inventory cost, but then the parts cost as well. A lot of times you do have to finance that. So, you have to have all of that sitting there.
Right.
All right, some speed round questions for you. What book are you currently reading, or do you have a favorite book?
Well, I know this is not like, a fun book sounding, but...
It's not a Stephen King book?
It's a book called Priceless by William Poundstone.
Okay.
And it's really an amazing study of people's perception and price and how they go hand to hand. So, the invisible fence was $2,000. Halo collar is $699 or $999. Mentally, people must think we're not as good. I mean, there's a psychology, like something that's $2,000 is better than something that's $700.
Right. Honda versus a Bentley, for example. Although Honda's a quality product also, but still.
Right. Price. A lot of people associate price and quality, price and performance, but that's not always the case, by the way. So there's a lot of psychology there. So this book is really around the psychology of pricing. One of the things that I remember vividly about it that is we still haven't solved, by the way. It's still a problem that we face that if we had, I think would be a big driver for sales. Is there's nothing to compare it to. Is $699 a good price, or you can compare it to the invisible fence, but people want to compare it to something similar. So to determine whether yours is better or worse. And if that doesn't exist, which in this case it doesn't exist because we're really the only ones who have it.
Although there's a lot of low-cost GPS collar solutions that really also don't do the same thing you do.
Right, they're just trackers. I mean, if your dog gets out of the fence, then it'll tell you where it is. But what their solution to that was, what William Poundstone's solution to that was, is have multiple pricing. So have a $4.99 version and a $9.99 version, because a lot of people would just want the best. They'll go for the $9.99, and a lot of people want the most cost effective, so they would go for the $4.99. But having two levels actually grows the sales of both.
Really?
And it's done in beer. You got to read the book. It's pretty
Priceless.
amazing.
Okay, priceless. All right. And one more question in that area. What's a new technology that you have your eye on?
I love the Oura Ring. I don't have it yet.
Yeah.
I see.
I do have one. It is pretty cool. It's an amazing technology. I mean, we've both been in the hardware business, but considering how small this thing is, the fact that they have to do different sizes of it for different finger sizes, that they've got multiple sensors, they've got battery life, it lasts a year, not a year. It lasts a week.
Okay.
Not a year. And they just added pulse ox. It does heart rate. It does all kinds of stuff. I don't know how they did it actually. That's like Asimov, right? Technology is indistinguishable from magic. So
right.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, you need to get one.
I know. It is like magic, and we're trying to do some of the Oura Ring type things for dogs. But first, let's start with keeping them safe.
Yeah.
Let's keep them where they're supposed to be. Let's get them, let them get the exercise they need, the freedom they need.
Yeah.
I mean, dogs got us through Corona.
Yeah.
And now with Halo, we can kind of pay them back.
There you go. Last question. How are you forging the future for technology companies?
That is, well, I could say this. In the future, and I'm hoping to be a big part of it, dogs are going to live a safe life. I mean, dogs are going to get the freedom and safety they deserve. They're not going to be put in kennels when their pet parents go on vacation. So the vision for me is that every dog has a Halo collar, and not really because it's my business, but because I know how tragic and unfortunate the current situation is. So we want to be kind of the iPhone for dogs. That is the vision. And we've barely scratched the surface. I mean, there's 90 million dogs in the US, and we've only sold, now we're up to about 114,000 collars. So we're not there's many dogs that are still at risk, many dogs that still need a way to keep them safe. So the future is still very much in front of us.
That's great. Well, That's what we owe man's best friend, right? Like, it's just tragic to have that many go lost or missing and that many get hit by cars. So you're doing great. So how can someone find or connect with you? HaloCollar.com?
Yes, it's at halocollar.com. But the other thing, and go back to the future, is I continue to do this, is trying to share my experiences with what's worked and what's not worked with other entrepreneurs and founders. Yeah. Because, and participating in the Venture Studios was fantastic for me. Being able to share some of my experiences, if that can help even one other person have a more straight line to success.
Yeah.
Because there never is, even in our case, it hasn't been a straight line to success. It just, there's going to be pitfalls. Chewy was a disaster. Not raising as much money as we wanted, not good. So you're going to have pitfalls, but hopefully we all learn from them. And as you heard, I'm still learning. So.
Yeah, we're all still learning. So how can someone connect with you?
So you can connect with me on LinkedIn, kenehrman.com. I have a website, or go to Halo Collar and send me an email. I mean, I'm I will get back to you. I'm not one of those people who thinks they're too good to get back to someone. So I've a lot of the relationships and people that are involved with Halo, I've found through LinkedIn, either me searching for them or them looking for me. And usually if they're looking for me, there's a reason. They have something that I might be interested in. They're not just looking for me for fun. So oftentimes there is. And it's amazing what's out there. And it's amazing how LinkedIn really helps make things that used to take years to establish relationships or find the right person be instant.
Yeah, that's another theme on the show, is just how these random collisions happen and you never know where they're going to come from. And so having the ability to connect with people for, quickly and easily through LinkedIn, and you never know whether you're going to be, basically if you take the approach that you're going to give more than receive, it still does come back full circle. Definitely.
It's pay it forward, whatever the term you want to use. I did that last night. I went out with my nephew and I took him out. He was a college kid. And I was like, I'm buying everything. And they're like, no. I'm like, this is called paying it forward. When you guys are my age, you'll do the same thing for your nephews.
There you go.
So, that is what we're expected to do.
Well, one of the things I like to do is wear different socks. Today I've got my Benjamin socks, my $100 bill socks on for good luck, since I'm up for Investor of the Year. So probably by the time this airs, we'll know whether that happened or didn't happen. But I wanted to give you something, first of all. Some socks. I don't know if you wear funny socks or
Mine
not.
are not funny, but they're not that good looking
I think
anyway.
You need some of these, the dog socks.
Wow.
There you go. I think those are on point. And then, hey, who doesn't need a pair of Ken Ehrman socks?
What? Come on. This is amazing technology.
Yeah, that's right.
You could have put a little more hair there.
Yeah, we'll fix it in post. But thanks for being on the show. You're an amazing founder, amazing technologies. If you've got a dog, check out Halo Collar. And thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.